Bing, 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 bing. Yeah. Yeah. Bing, 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 bing. Yeah. Alright, let's call into this panel. I'm a little bit late. That's because my computer fucked up and now I had to fucking restore the whole fucking thing. But I got everything. Good. Set everything up. Let's call.
They would have different interests, or they choose to go into vacation because like that's the only opportunity available to them.
I disagree with that, Smith. But sorry, I just said Smith because I saw Smith enter. I disagree with that point, but I'm gonna talk on Portland's thing, and then I want you to restate your question so that I can then answer it, Corey. So what I think is also important is that these are fields that incentivize and reward getting in early, striking while the iron is hot, both in having your body be in such a state that you are younger. So if we're talking about manual labor, but then it's also based on
Hold on. Stop.
Practical addressment. Stop. Okay, address the dog in the room.
Yes. That's panel, Smith, is tomorrow. Okay? Did you make sure you arrived at the right panel? The dogfucker panel is tomorrow.
I'm at the wrong panel.
Today's the college panel.
I'm prepared to talk about this. I'm prepared. I gotta fix
okay,
my...
buddy?
Yeah, I'm okay. I just had to restore my
Bark
computer.
2 times.
Okay, carry on. Whatever. It's happening. Go on. Carry on.
Okay. Well, since Portland has something to giggle about, I'll go back. So yeah, no. I think what's really important though is that inside of the imagination of young boys are a variety of careers that don't require that they do the investment that college requires, and these are careers that reward people going in early, young, setting up these connections, whether or not that's actions like that require a trade school or otherwise. Because I would like to also bring in the statistics when we compare like a trade school as opposed to a traditional 2 or 4 year degree. Boys are just more interested in these things in general than girls are, and I think that also the economic pressures make it so that they're more willing to go towards pragmatic and simpler forms of education and preparation for their jobs rather than ones that are more complicated. Now, Corey, ask me your question again so I can address it as
I don't need to as in like you think like just like take probably like one of the most traditionally male dominated professions, medicine, being a physician, doctor. You just think, well, especially that results in like a pretty that allows you to generally accumulate a pretty high amount of wealth, at least relatively speaking. And you think just like, well, yeah, they just no longer want that position, not only just like respect and status. Like you just think, well, collectively they're no longer interested in going to medicine. Like one of the most like for going back as long as you can up until like maybe the past 50 years. It's just like they're no longer interested in becoming a physician. Just like medicine, no longer attractive. Like that is your assessment.
It's not medicine itself. It's the risk of going into the education, putting all of that investment in, and potentially not making it through, or making it through but having to sacrifice so much opportunity on the way there. I myself am a college dropout. I ended up originally wanting to go into psychology, and then I slowly but surely moved towards other practical goals and going to a trade school instead because I cared more about making money and creating a life for myself as soon as possible because I didn't see the amount of money as being like a reasonable investment. And that's a decision that I made, and I think it's a decision that is a lot easier to make as a male than a female, considering the jobs that are typically shown to you and demonstrated to you in your early years as potential futures.
And you think the vocation and trades, like moving forward, like, extrapolating decades, that has the greatest long-term outcome, especially with like greater automation and like specifically like the declining labor market of less educated men. Like I will link something.
That's the best outcome. I don't think it has the best outcome. I'm simply saying that there's a reason why males are moving in that direction and females are not. It's just inside of their decision matrix. I don't think that boys are making a good decision innately in doing this. I'm just saying they are making this decision. It does have rational reasons behind it.
I understand, given their framework, it's like that. I think you're speaking to my point, as in, like, given the current status of, like, the research is clear in terms of, like, earning power. Like, there's no greater way to increase your chances of earning potential is by getting a college education. And then you're pretty much, like, to my point, almost is like, well, yeah, I was in college and I decided to drop out because, like, yeah, something else was more attractive. But, like, it shouldn't be if you have a high degree of certainty that you're going to complete college, like, that is, like, there's almost no reason why you shouldn't, at least if you're concerned about earning power. And so, like, yes, I understand. So to my point, given the current state of, like, the lack of achievement, it's like, well, yeah, there's not very many other options available to you. As in, if you can't get through the college education, you will be funneled into the trades because those are more accessible.
Yeah, but trades are still themselves, not only are they more accessible, so people are going to be more willing to go into them, and males more willing than females regularly to go into them, but there are economic pressures in your early 20s that make you want to go into those more practical pursuits than getting yourself into, like, a 4-year university, potentially with even further education after that.
Why don't women? Hey, wait, stop! Why don't
Wick is
women
going to ask my question.
Pressures? Why don't women face those same pressures? Right? Like, why are women choosing one route and men just choosing another? But I would say they both face these same pressures, and unless your argument is that they don't, right?
No, they do.
They don't.
But they respond.
So wait,
as far as in the home,
Portland said they don't. So why?
In the home, they absolutely do not. In terms of the way that we've traditionally raised our children, we have never seen a very large percentage of our, like, male role models socializing and raising our female children to participate in the kinds of physical industries that they do. They typically do that with male children. It's not something that we see a tremendous, like, overlap in, even though we do see a little bit. It's not to say it doesn't exist at all. My mom went into construction out of high school working for the company that my grandpa did. So, like, there's obviously some level of overlap, but I don't think that the same level of social pressure for female children has existed historically in the United States to get into the trades that their fathers have, grown up in and participated in. So,
and before we move on, Smith, can you actually talk in that thing?
Yes, I can. It's very hot.
We can't hear you if you're saying something.
You can't hear. Oh.
Did you even hear that it's not the dog panel?
Can you hear me at all?
It's a goddamn. He's messing with our heads,
whistle.
man.
He's messing with our heads, and he came a running. Anyway, once you figure that out, just start barking. Okay, start barking, letting us know you're here.
And again. Go ahead, Wick, if you want to finish.
No, I'm just trying to get him in on this. It's
It's
freaking me out that he's just sitting there in silence. But go on.
And you're taking into
clap your hands, make a non-vocal noise so we can know if the mic is working.
So then, why are you continuing to behave this way? I'm very perplexed.
He's doing this to us. You understand?
There we go. Oh my God, he looks like a dog now.
And also, I would say this fails to take into account. Like, I understand, you're both American, so you're coming from that framework with that lens. But as Wick alluded to earlier, like, this holds internationally, as in from, like, Finland to Iceland, where, like, college is super cheap, if not free. Where it's almost like a no-brainer when it comes to, like, one of the best ways to improve your economic standing and increase your ability to accumulate wealth. Again, from Finland to Iceland, like, they're just choosing not to go. Where, like, their achievement just lags behind. Where it's like the argument of, like, you're going to be saddled with debt doesn't hold true really all that much in Finland or Iceland.
Everything.
And they are seeing the exact same crisis.
Okay. All right. I'll go fix it.
We've still got nothing. We've got nothing from you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But to the topic at hand, right? Like, so how do we address this, Tuna Chip? Like, you're making these assertions, but the data doesn't seem to support you.
I mean, the data supports the idea that men don't think that they need to go to a college in America. I'm focusing mostly on the American thing. I'll have to look at the data in those other countries when it comes down to it. But I think in general, the increase in women by statistic is just because we've gotten to a point where women are reacting to the same economic pressures that men are in a different way. Men are getting more practical. They're going towards these jobs, and women are reacting by creating forms of getting money that are outside of the traditional form of like a marriage, where you're going to get married to someone who is the breadwinner, so on and so forth. We're moving to different places because we're coming from different starting points. So if we're going to see women going towards becoming financially independent and men also doing the same thing, it's going to happen in a different way. They have a different context, a different imagination, a different willingness to go into different fields. I'm going to go ahead and look right now. You said, was it Denmark that you mentioned, Corey? I'm just pulling up this to see if I can see any. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, by all means.
I'll try and address that in a very pointed way then.
Yeah, that's for sure.
To Corey,
where did you say you posted that? Because I'm like having a little bit of a hard time following exactly what Corey's argument.
Well, what I posted in the research links channel, I posted in terms of like the declining labor market of less educated men. That is a problem in terms of like, yeah, when it comes to like long-term decision making, like there's absolutely nothing wrong with the trade.
Because men are better at decision making than women because they're less emotional. Is that what you're saying, Corey? Okay, Corey's on record as the sexist of the panel. That's fine. Let's move on.
I will make my claim in terms of this is largely a socialization issue. In terms of, I think this is just like largely the result of the poor socialization of men and boys. They're just they don't have the tools to get through university or college.
We agree that it's socialization, but I think that the thing that I think is weird is you think that going to college is better. Why do you think it's better? Why do you think that it's a flaw that boys are not going to college? Because maybe that's because I think it doesn't matter who goes to college or not. That's an individual choice. I don't think that there's anything better or worse than that. Maybe that's where we disagree mainly.
Yeah, no, I would point to the same issue that like because we identify a disparate rate doesn't mean that there's a problem that needs acting on. We just like need to kind of understand the reasons why that might happen.
Okay, so I will reframe sort of what you said because, again, I think it fails to take into account also the dropout rate. It's as in, like, you just seem to be focused on, well, yeah, they're choosing not to go. But
that was me leaving the Discord call because I just recovered my password so I could log into the app because I just reinstalled everything. And my password manager isn't everything needed, whatever. Just fucking log in. Let's get it going. Okay, let's go. Hey. Sorry about this, everybody. I had to deal with some computer issues. So apologize if it's kind of a shitty stream, but it'll get better. Here we go. Here we go. Change my settings. There we go. Yes. Thank you. Ink forgives me. Okay. Hello? Now I can't hear anybody. I can talk now. You can hear me. Why do you think they're going to increase? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So why do you think that the death and despair will increase in men if women are more educated? Because I would assume that and I would if the despair in women is increasing as they're getting more educated and getting these more high stress jobs, then I would assume that men would have lower stress jobs and women would be supporting them more, and it would actually level out in the opposite direction. And if it didn't, then that would be contingent on a social issue and not on the education itself. Wait, I think that there's another way that can turn out though. I think that it could actually just change the expectations of women and men could actually change. Like the more empowered women become, and I think if that's not the case, then I think that there needs to be like men need to be like, okay, wait, look, we need to, if women are more out educating us, then we need to adapt a little bit of their attitude of, well, I'm not giving up my pussy just for nothing. I'm not giving up my dick just for nothing. Be a little bit more selective. We should, yeah. Okay, okay, I get what you're saying, but all these I talk about these particular interconnected web of gender relation dynamics a lot, and I think it's very complicated, and it's not just that one thing. Like I think it'll also affect women. So in the case where there are more, like lazy, like good for nothing, like scoundrel guys that don't have the good jobs that the women want, in their eyes or whatever, then it might be the case that I think it would be the case that a lot of women with those expectations would end up being more lonely, and the only men that are actually available to satisfy them are going to be big players because they're going to have so high demand and so many options. So actually, I think women's expectations will change too.
secure scholarships. And again, this doesn't take into account the international context, where again, like Finland and Iceland, like yes, there's some cost tuition, but like basically you don't actually need a scholarship to meet the economic basically to fund your higher education in those countries.
To be fair, like the higher education thing, I mean, like the funding thing doesn't really bear out in the U.S. either. Even just in the Pew Research thing, the Pew Research document that I shared with you guys, women are more likely to cite financial barriers in the United States, at least, as the reason that they didn't go to college than men are, even though men are less likely to attend and complete college. Of the people who don't go to college, women are more likely to cite financial barriers for the reason why, whereas men are more likely to cite lack of interest or lack of need to pursue the career of interest that they have. So, what say you, Corey?
Well, I mean, yeah. If we want to focus on the United States, I have no problem with that. But I am generally like more concerned and like. I think like I said, I think there's a reason why you are seeing this occur like internationally, where like yes, totally. Like I think the economics of this situation like exacerbates this growing discrepancy in the United States. But which is why like I'm all for free university education, as in like finances should not be a factor in your decision making process on whether you choose to get a university education. So that's like my position.
Are we confident? Because maybe one of you is actually like certain of this. Are we confident that those proposed self-reporting reasons for why they're not going are actually the true reasons? Because I can imagine someone saying that like little interest is actually just saying that they don't have the money, or somebody that's saying they don't have the money is only saying that because they have little interest, or and vice versa. So
you see this happen all the time. People see a woman that they know they could possibly get with. They have 100% no chance, none, and they're like, oh, she's just mid. But
So
you know
no
they're
data.
fucking. That's fucking.
No data
cope.
then.
You know that's fucking cope. You know they're fucking lying. You know they're fucking.
No matter
making
how
shit
much
up,
It's
that
right?
self-reporting.
data conforms to the obvious
Yeah.
reality that we all observe, we should throw it out because people could make it up. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just have a talk
We
about
aren't
our
throwing it out.
wait,
we're
wait.
putting it into context.
Wait.
Well,
We can talk about this in a very sort of like it's self-reporting. And self-reporting comes with dilemmas. But there are ways to get that data that aren't self-reporting. Like there could be a census that could actually show us that. Economic wise, like the relationship between the people going in their
So
like employment and their
Men
resources.
are more likely to
Hold
drop
on,
out.
that would tell us like the economic realities of the situation,
Yeah.
but what we're trying to measure the
With the
reason
economic
that
reality.
people act the way that they do. So their like perception of the limitations that they have is a lot more important than whether or not you can prove that they're right or wrong through economic data. This is a conversation about
Okay.
why people behave a certain way. So
That's fair.
self-reporting
But we
is
know the
gonna
way
be
they're
much more
behaving.
reliable.
But
And this is
Portland,
Pew Research data. This isn't like data pulled from like a random article
Was
or
it peer
something.
reviewed?
This is at the very least a better quality of data than you're going to generally get from random articles. So what do
okay,
you?
but Portland, real quick, like we know that men drop out at much higher rates than women. So regardless of whether they sit what they're saying they're doing, what we know they're actually doing, how they're behaving, right?
Okay,
'Cause-
hold on.
Wait, what's more
I wanna
important?
explain-
What people say they're going to do, or what they actually do? And I would 100%
It's covered
go with
in
the second
part
one.
in that Pew Research paper that I provided you guys. There is a section that talks about why men, after 1 or 2 years, realize that the courses that they're that the college education that they're pursuing might not be conducive to the lifestyle or career choice that they are actually maturing into. So there's like that's explainable via some extenuating factors that I think are easy enough to just like dismiss offhand. But if you actually look into the way they gather the data, they do account for a lot of those things.
Portland, let me take this really quick. So if we're going to be doubtful about the rationale of these people and if they're being honest, if we're going to say that they're just taking a big C cope when they're saying, oh, I don't really want to go to college, it doesn't suit the ends that I want out of my life, then we also have to use that same amount of skepticism about people that go into college, that they don't actually want to go into college, that the people that are going into college are going there because they believe that it is the thing to do because they've been encouraged into
A
it.
lot of people do.
included. You
Yeah, a
can't
lot
just
of people do. That's true. That's a true thing that happens, right? I know a lot of people who went to college just because that's what they're expected to do. That their
but
mom
we
went to college, or their mom's mom went to college, and they were going to go to college too. I know that happens. Like this has happened in my family, right? Like, yeah. So no, okay, I'm with you. Fair.
So
So
speaking,
my point
sorry, I'll
there
let you finish.
for that reason, out of that skepticism, because at that point, what you're saying is that data is memeaningless because it can't be a
No,
porthole.
it's not meaningless.
So wait, no, we're not saying. Me and
It
Wick are not
implies
saying
that.
data isn't meaningless. We're saying, or at least I'm saying that it's that this specific data is self-reporting,
Right, because we're
So-
tracking decisions. We're not tracking something like self-reporting has a lot of problems when you're trying to assess something like the efficacy of a medicine or something that is reliant on self-reporting, like the consumption of alcohol as it relates to your physical health. Like these are self-reporting statistics that are fundamentally untrustworthy on some level. But when you're asking a person, why did you or did you not do a thing, that is a
that's
self-reporting
why did you or
question.
why did you not drink alcohol? Like it's the same.
That's
but,
not, no.
But wait, hold on. Let me give you an example of like how this could like so like there's so many ways you can interpret this data because you're learning their perception. That's a fact of what they think. So men are saying that they're not going because they're not interested. I think that sounds like men are like too they're too proud to say that they don't have the money. And maybe if women are interested, they're just saying that they don't have the money just because.
Okay, so
Nobody has the money. Nobody has the money to go to college. It's so fucking expensive. So that like if you don't want to go, like it's so
In the
so
US.
the gendered attitude. We're talking. So those data points tell me about the gendered attitude, but I don't think that's actually representative of a difference of reality.
Math, it doesn't
The
matter.
reality is specific to the like 36% of both genders that overlap in their reasoning. There's not like 9% men that say they weren't interested and 0% women. There's like 44% men that say they weren't interested, and that's why they didn't finish a 4-year degree, and like 36% women. So like the overlap that you're talking about exists in the statistical overlap of those groups. The
Okay,
anomalistic statistical difference, the one that we're trying to like assess via these
he doesn't agree.
Instruments, that's
Math.
the one that we're trying to examine in a vacuum here. Tuna, go
Matt,
ahead.
the point that you should be looking at is that if there is some variation, some like error variation in terms of those people, some of those people are coping. That is negated by its opposite, by its inversion, which is the number of men that are going into college, not in good faith, but either out of a sense of obligation or a false understanding of what college will give them that is then wizened upon through going to the college. So what you're looking at, that variation can just be off-written by its opposite.
Well,
They're
actually,
not-
I'm not. What I'm pointing at isn't a fluctuation or a variation. I'm saying that the specific thing you get from this data is their perception, but their perception is not like that's not like that's it's a fact of their perception and nothing else.
It's what it's meant to measure, though. We're not measuring the economic reality. We are measuring their perception.
Right.
Why did you or did you not do a thing? So there is no alternative piece of data to point to like measure against to assess the reality. The reality is what they perceive. And that is what we're measuring. So there is no reason to like look for reasons to invalidate their perception and draw and like go ahead.
This extends from grade school, right? From primary education, right? And obviously these Pew Research data, right, is for college only, but this phenomenon extends up and down the education spectrum, up and down,
I mean,
internationally.
I started
right?
participating in sports on a year-round level and excelling at them around 3rd grade, and did that all the way through my high school career. At no point did I think during that time that like I wanted to graduate with a 4-year degree. I was on a different trajectory from a very early age, and guess what? I don't have a 4-year degree. I don't have a college degree at all, and I have followed a career trajectory that like worked out for me, as it does for a lot of men, because we have certain economic and like opportunity-based advantages historically that allow us to bypass higher education and still make a decent living.
Do you think
Let's elevate really quick. Let's elevate discussion. We all agree. I think we've all agreed, and so we don't have to talk it to death, the point that men don't believe that they need to go to college. The question is, do we think that we should encourage them to be more involved in education, or or boys in general? Let's not say men. Boys in general seem to be less invested in education, and it seems that we are less invested because we see alternatives. But what the other side is saying is that even though those alternatives exist, those alternatives are becoming less viable over time. That's Corey's point with his article that he sent here.
I have a big contention with that point, because there's an obvious trend in the outcomes of men and women where men end up they end up more poor or more rich than women, and women end up in the middle far more often than men. So if you're saying that men are foregoing the education and they're getting this like middle of the road lifestyle, the data actually shows that women are much more likely to end up in the middle, healthy end of the road.
Not what
Really?
That's not what I said. I say that men are getting a middle of the road position.
Well,
I'm saying that
Portland kind of implied that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, I gave an example of when that turns out to be true, and like the social pressures that contribute to men following different paths than women from a really early age. I didn't say that it was like statistically true of the average young man in the United States. It's just like I got particular social pressures that didn't happen to be college oriented. It worked out for me in this particular set of circumstances like it does for a lot of people, but it certainly isn't like the ideal path, and it's not one that I would prescribe to people who are asking whether or not they should go to college. I think it just happened to work out for me. And statistically speaking, it probably worked out for a lot more young men of the same educational attainment level.
Yeah, but that's just an anecdote. I'm saying that like statistically. So you're saying
it's an anecdote that directly lines up with the data and the trends that we have outlined and observed through these empirical measures.
There's more poor and rich men and more like middle income women.
I'm technically upper middle class. I'm not in the in either of those categories. I'm like in the upper middle class category, which is, still statistically better than average, which is what you're saying, like most women end up with. So I don't know it's not really important. It's really just me pointing out that like the social pressures that young men experience at an early age contribute to an environment where they don't feel as pressured to rely on a college education specifically. They feel like
we all agree
opportunities.
We can stop it. We can stop explaining to this. So we agree that men just simply have this opinion that is different than women's collective opinion. Do we think that needs to change? Do we need to talk about education and incentivizing education in boys or not? Because I think that we all like what has been happening for women. Women's enrollment is going up. The thing that we're feeling is that men's enrollment is going down at the same time. I just don't think so.
I don't think we need a gendered approach at all. I think in general, we should encourage people to get more into trades. I think women actually end up going into things like nursing and social work and stuff that ends up being middle of the road, basically the same equivalent of a trade type situation, like hairdressers. That's like a trade. Like there's a lot of stuff like that women do. Nurses is a real big one.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just answer your question directly. Okay, I think it is a problem. I think it's a growing problem. I think a lot of the issues that we're seeing kind of downstream, right? Like this is a symptom, right? First of all, I don't think these things are causing. This education thing isn't a causal thing, but it is a symptom of a larger problem.
I agree.
That is happening internationally, right? But especially in America.
What is the problem?
Most of the data for the data. The problem is that the men are just getting left behind when it comes to the elite academia, when it comes to higher education opportunities, when it comes to all these things. And like the problem is that honestly, people don't give a shit about men anymore. So this isn't even seen as a problem.
I was gonna say I don't agree that it's not that they're I just think people just don't. People love women and they don't love men. I think that's kind of a big part of it. It just fundamentally.
Hold on. Is it really that malicious that like we can describe a reality where it's not an exact 50-50 breakout of male and female college education for rational reasons that might be explainable through like features of reality that we don't necessarily need to change or institutions we don't necessarily need to tear down?
Yeah.
It's like a 10% difference in terms
Corey,
of the
please
college
take this.
education rates.
Okay.
So
So-
20%.
urgent need to solve
20%
that problem?
difference, by the way.
Yeah, like this is a massive. It's almost like saying like should we bring down the deaths of despair that again disproportionately affect men?
It's not. When you associate it with all those other areas and make it like an entire societal, like broader argument instead of focusing on like this specific issue, when you tie it into every other like aspect of capitalism and society that's gone wrong, yes, it does seem to be insurmountable.
I've never mentioned that. It's almost like saying
No. You mentioned economic
Don't create
circumstances.
this
You
trap
kind of
for
like
it.
alluded to it a few times.
I want to hear Corey out. Corey might actually have some input. Let's hear it.
thank you, Tuna Chip.
Yeah,
So I mean, I would ask the question in terms of okay, fine. I will take the point, or rather, I agree that whatever the opinion on whatever pursuing a college or university education is different, and I also agree, at least from my perspective, what Wick outlined. I think this is a symptom of a larger problem that should be addressed. So what I would potentially want to zoom in on, like, okay. Whether they're choosing to go or not to pursue a college education or university education. But I think one of the reasons also, like I alluded to earlier, is like the performance lags behind, as in they cannot get their foot in the door. And the data hold that up pretty much, as Wick alluded to, from like primary school to like the end of high school. Like the performance of boys tends to lag behind a little bit, from whatever mild to moderate behind girls. So like, why do we think the performance lags behind? Because I think that's a symptom as well of something, or is that just like whatever? That's just how it is.
They just don't care as much.
So, yes?
So
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So-
Goldie, hello, welcome.
Hi, how you doing? So, I'm one of those people who went to university and left and took very little from my time there. I made very few meaningful connections. I did not go into the field in which I studied. And I got as much distance between myself and academia as possible, as quickly as possible when I left. Something that I've been doing since that point is I've been mentoring new grads. Now that's I know there's a little bit of a weird maybe conflict there between those two things. But the reason being is I went through for political science and I realized that I should have never gotten in. Something happened in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and universities started to accept a lot more people. A lot of people say that they were stocking cash as per the 2008 recession, which makes sense. They let in more kids, make more money. But this had a horribly disproportionate effect on young men. Because when we look at the top 20, 30% of kids going into university, generally, academically, they have the skills in order to succeed. But when we start getting that underneath that point, young men and boys typically fall off on those skills to succeed in a traditional academic environment like university quicker than young girls do. So in the top 30%, when admissions are tight and we're only letting in the best of the best, or so somewhat, you don't see that disparity. You don't see that disparity as much.
What are those skills? What are those skills?
So there's skills like organizational, time management skills. A lot of things that men won't accumulate until like their mid-20s. A lot of the time, I've found a lot of guys who actually go back to school in their 25, 26, 27. They do quite a bit better. Whereas girls can typically succeed right out of high school. They've developed a lot of those time management skills. They've developed a lot of those abilities to put, what they're wanting to do aside in order for the task at hand.
Yeah.
Whereas, you're throwing young men at 18, 19 into a social environment with zero constraints on their behavior. and then wondering why the bottom half of the young men that you're letting into the university are dropping out.
Well, I agree, but for an insidious reason, because I think this is all very complicated. These gender dynamic. I think the reason that women are better in that environment is because they're better and more trained in being subordinate. So so they're going to do their fucking homework. They're going to because I remember being in high school and like watching the girls like in the class. They like didn't like interact. They did all their homework or everything. Like they followed all the rules, and the men would be fucking wilding out in class and like making fucking a ruckus, just like making a big distraction. And so I feel like women were just kind of
I think
drilled
we're
into
missing his major point here before, and I don't want to get too distracted on it because it's an interesting point, one I haven't thought of, and I'm wondering what everyone else thinks of this. But first of all, gang, I need your money to survive and to eat and to live. So give me your money, give me your subs, give me your bits. Thank you. Okay, but you made a assertion. Thank you for the follow. That after 2008 or so, that they started colleges
letting more kids in.
Wider application process opened
I
up.
I was accepted into a BA Poli Sci with a 62 average out of high school, with zero extracurriculars.
And you're pointing to this as one of the causal factors of the performance gap.
Absolutely. And if we look at it since then, and we look at the types of majors that have popped up since like the Yale shitstorm of 2013, the number of majors in a university have been going up wildly. They're coming out of the fucking woodworks. They're literally inventing new ways to trick kids into thinking they can get a higher education to take their fucking money. And this is why when I'm mentoring these young people coming out of university, I won't touch liberal arts kids, because even the technical degree kids that are coming out,
you probably should touch kids.
Thanks. They're at least 21 by the time I get my hands on them. But but we're saying like I'm seeing like math, stats, CS, engineering, hard sciences. Generally, medicine and law don't have this issue, but the rest of these very technical, very cerebral degrees, these kids are coming out with the intelligence and some knowledge. They have zero soft skills. They don't know how to enter the job market. Like, schools aren't doing the thing they claim to be doing anymore. Yeah. They're not doing it. There's a very small number of schools that are still devoted to this this goal of higher education. But the second I have a kid who comes to me 19, 20, 21 years old, and he goes, hey, I'm starting to network. I want to get in the job market. Like, I'm like, well, what'd you go to school for? And he says communications. I say, go get your MBA and then we'll talk. Because your communications degree doesn't mean anything anymore.
Wait, that's different. That's a different thing from saying that it doesn't give them the skills. That's saying it's not giving them the degree.
Right. But I'm saying, I'm sorry. I've created a divide, and then I muddled the water a little bit there. The liberal arts kids, the communications kids, I won't even spend the time mentoring them. Because not only do they not have the soft skills, they don't even have a degree that fucking works for them.
So they all don't have the soft skills.
None of them do.
Okay.
This seems like a pretty misleading premise. Like, we can recognize that the education system has failed students into thinking that your degree should reflect on what your profession should be. And I think what liberal arts degrees are revealing is that you should go to school to better yourself, and that should be divorced from the job market.
Now, I do agree with you. With you that there should definitely be some motivation. Academia should carry its own motivation, right? But in saying that, the motivation of the vast majority in academia is not a pursuit of knowledge.
Correct.
Right? It's I would like to leave this place, and I would like to engage in the promise that's been sold to me in my life up to this point, to engage successfully in capitalist society. Yeah, that's why they're there.
Yeah, well, I recognize that your approach is that you want to mentor students who get into the market to participate in capitalism. I totally understand that, and that's like a thing that you can do, and you can live your best life doing that. I'm saying that it just perpetuates the inequity that exists within the institution. Like, we can agree that kids were lied to about the purpose of education, but it seems like your advocacy is recognizing that this inequality exists and understanding that this lack of justice exists, but instead of trying to properly redress that, you just want to make sure that students participate in the market as it would have been intended.
Well, what I don't want to see is a kid, whether they had the good fortune to have like a solid family life and a decent social situation, or they're out of the LGBT community and they had to use their entire fucking mindset just to get through the academic part of school, and then came out because all the rest of their bandwidth was being used to survive while they're at school. So they come out without understanding the meta of the job market. I don't want to see these kids going out into the world and not knowing how to fend for themselves. That's what bothers me. They were sold a promise. They go to school for 4 years. They come out. They think to themselves, I've got a math degree. I know multiple people with math degrees who don't even know what they can use it for. They don't realize that they can go and they can go, a lot of industries that need math degrees aren't great industries. They aren't great moral industries, but they don't realize they could go into insurance. They don't realize they could go into being a data analyst. They hear data analyst and they think CS. They don't realize that they love math stats grads. They don't realize that they can, there's just so much, and that's not being taught to them. And the ones with these technical degrees are supposed to be the grads that are pushing boundaries outwards. They're supposed to be the ones supporting large business. You'd think there'd be an incentive for the schools to make sure that at a minimum, they understand how to walk out those doors on year 4 plus 1 day. And at minimum, they know how to make a LinkedIn account.
Sure, but we can also recognize the value of liberal arts degrees.
Okay, I can speak to that.
Liberal arts degrees are also important for the market.
Yeah, I have.
You're not going to have a just system in America without liberal arts degrees. You're going to need philosophy majors. You're going to need psychology majors. You're going to need sociology majors, and these are people that will help make sure that those very fields that are participating in those markets are actually just for those people.
Just before Smith, just before you jump back in, I just have a closing statement. I completely agree with what you're saying, but I think we've gotten to a point where we're letting too many people into those liberal arts degrees. I think
we're at a point where we're not holding institutions accountable for their actions.
I think they're both. Yeah, I think we're saying.
So we are letting too many people into higher education. That's your take.
Yes.
Okay, fair. Matt, go ahead.
Okay, well, I have a degree in fine arts, and my education was very different than a lot of people. A lot of people, they talk about just being focused on the degree and everything. For me, it was all about, I grew so much as a person, and I learned a lot of skills, but I also didn't learn any practical skills whatsoever. And I remember in my senior year, I was freaking out because I was like, okay, this is the last year. What am I fucking gonna do? So I was like, okay, is there any services? I was like, is it okay? I was going to like fucking offices all the time. I was trying to like, okay, so is there anybody who can help me like ease into getting a job or trying to figure out like how to do this shit? And they're like, oh, the best I got was someone who like would like see me once a week and just like mentored me on writing a better CV. And I had a fucking fine CV. That's
such bullshit help.
Yeah,
That's like such bullshit help.
Absolute bullshit help, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, and I still they did not teach me how to be an artist as a job, but I figured out the streaming thing, but yeah.
And even a fine arts degree, I wouldn't put in this like. I would even say a fine arts degree is outside of what I'm talking about. It is a technical degree. Like you just don't realize coming out as a fine arts major that you can be a graphic designer.
You have to kind of start your own business,
right? You can go in. You could work in a marketing company. You could there's a million things you can do with a fine arts degree, but you don't know that.
I think they should have taught us to start our own business. That's what they should have taught us, like literally.
Well, it depends. If you're looking again, like if you're looking for a more capitalistic approach to education, then absolutely, then you're going to have to reveal those things that exist within the market within liberal arts degrees. Like this is why we have DEI officers that are completely inadequate, because those DEI officers that are going into these schools and going into these public institutions and these like all these things are not designed for justice; they're just designed to make money. So, but we got to recognize that, like, okay, we have
DEI for those of my audience who may not be aware is diversity, equity, and inclusion, correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I didn't know what that was. So
Yeah, well,
I
I
know
mean,
that
I
was
know
the-
There
that
are
it's
DEI
accurate.
officer, like there are sociologists, and and I hate to like shit on them for this, but it's like you have a lot of people who are in DEI that don't really care about justice. They're just there because the pay is good,
Is the job.
and they go, and this is how you get these inadequate education programs. You get these inadequate things that you're trying to solve. But I would say, to Smeth's point, when we're looking at like the overall problem within like higher education, I think it's just a recognition that you got to reach students where they're at, and you have to, like, how are you making sure that every student within your program is seen? And for a lot of institutions, they don't want to pay for that level of investment towards students. They want to.
Is that what we want from education? To make sure every student is seen? Like, from
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
it sounds like. So from what
Absolutely.
it sounds like, however, what Goldie is saying, and Tuna disagrees, and I'm curious
Yeah.
what Corey would think. But
Yeah, the capitalist
Goldie
is
is
cool.
saying, and please correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. But what Goldie is saying is that we already let too many people in, that we need to restrict it. First of all, Goldie, I'd be curious to know which groups you would want to exclude from education, right? Like
dumber kids.
dumber kids. So the dumber kids. How do we measure that?
It would be
Like-
mostly boys in that case, actually.
Yeah,
And it would be
Mostly
super
boys.
unfortunate. It would be super unfortunate. Like I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
it would be very
So
unfortunate.
he's
if
not
black
here for
kids do
solving the
not-
It
problem.
could be
and
a
then,
wake-up call.
And then when we don't do that, and then we see that it disproportionately affects black men and boys especially, then you're
But
gonna
right
see
now,
me on
the
panels again.
dropout rate disproportionately affects black men and boys.
Walk me through it like I'm a toddler. What do you mean by that?
So there's been a massive increase in the dropout rate since 2012 in higher education in North America. And a lot of that can be pointed to the fact they were letting more people in. They had to lower their standards.
Or they're not supported,
They
not
didn't. They
provide.
weren't blacks. Like, okay, I'm going to make the claim that black boys, in particular black men in education, were never supported. They were never educationally supported. Their dropout rates were always high. It's not just this new thing, just because there's more students coming in that now we see the dropout rates. It's always been floating in the 30s and 40s.
Right. So then, what's the argument against letting less kids in and that disproportionately affecting black men?
If you
and
let
boys?
less kids, if you let less kids in, you're going to have a ripple effect that goes. It starts it doesn't start in higher education. It starts all the way in public education. It
Right.
starts in
But
kindergarten.
we're definitely talking about higher
Absolutely.
education right now.
Right, but I'm
Yeah, but
saying
if you-
this
if you try
problem
to-
exists in kindergarten. It does not exist in
Yeah,
higher
yeah.
ed.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
your
If you-
level of
if you try
equity
to-
for that has to start in public education.
I also
at
think it's
pre-K.
more of an issue in the U.S. than it is in Canada.
I want to let some other people in. I want to let
not
some other
really.
people in. There's a couple people in who joined. They have really big opinions, and I want to give them a chance to share them. And let's see how they do. A base night, I believe. Yeah, you had some thoughts.
So-
What do you think?
Yeah, so basically, I think like one of the biggest problems that young men are facing today, especially students like in primary education, high school, is that a lot of the toxic masculinity that's been like brought to the fore in like recent years has been perceived by like young men mostly as like a cudgel against masculinity in general, instead of like a tool of empowerment, which is what it was supposed to be. Toxic masculinity is supposed to be exposing things that keep men from succeeding, and instead of like being taken in by like men in general, it's been largely like seen as like an attack on masculinity in general. So I think like when it comes to our cultural ideas of like education, it's like deeply disincentivized like culturally, at least in the United States, to try to participate in your education, to ask questions, to be passionate about learning. And I think that these are ultimately cultural issues that we need to confront, and messaging is going to play a huge role in it.
So can I speak to that? Or rather, I can speak to that from somewhat direct experience where, okay, this is why I brought up where I'm of the opinion that this is largely a socialization issue. And I'm not saying this is the cause and just solving this will, just equalize the situation. But one of the things, in terms of like the way, generally speaking, men and boys are socialized, it fits under the category of help-seeking behavior. In terms of like, this is one of the reasons why generally on average, women tend to live longer than men. One of the reasons why, not the only reason, one of the reasons is that generally speaking, women are more likely to, go see a doctor, or, men will only go see a doctor once they have the heart attack, as opposed to like beforehand. And the same thing holds true just when it comes to other help-seeking behaviors. I've had this direct experience, like as a teacher, like I totally have conversations, with men who are enrolled in my courses that like I'm teaching them. They'll express that they're struggling, and I'll remove all barriers for them to come see me for extra help, as in like outside of my office hours. I say like email me, we'll set up an appointment. I'll work around your schedule, and that email never comes. And then I see the grades, like no surprise. The grades are not so good. Just for whatever reason, largely social reasons, like they will not ask for help. And generally speaking, men are just have a overall less supportive environment. As in, generally speaking, women are better at supporting other women. Men not so good at supporting other men.
I gotta disagree on on a couple of things here. A lot of it I agree with. I do think that there is a problem where men are not. They don't care about themselves in the same way that women do. They're not encouraged to. We're encouraged to care about ourselves in a slightly different way. I don't think that this way that people have called it toxic masculinity is the right way to describe it, but that's its own separate conversation. To address Joe's point, because I think that it connects with this, one of the main reasons that we're having a lot of these people dropping out is because entry is not good enough. Entry is not the thing that's really helping. People should be entering college because they have a plan and there's something that college is moving towards. A lot of people are being given entry and being incentivized to go to college, but they don't have a career in mind that they're building towards. They don't have a job that is going to give their college not only their college plan a good defining sense of direction so that nothing is extraneous, but also it's going to be the fire burning under everything, a goal that they're actually moving towards. A lot of people during college, one of the main reasons I see men dropping out is because they have a goal, they become disenfranchised from the goal because they didn't actually care about it enough to put that investment into college. And then when the next year's enrollment comes in and the next financial doubling down on that investment comes in, they're like, you know what?
It's not worth it.
Practical. I'm gonna go into the practical.
But
that's what causes.
Doesn't that problem?
I mean, I'm really confused
like
because
it's more downstream from like other ones. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also confused, Tuna, because it's anywhere from 70 to 80% of Black men have a goal in mind when they enter into institutions, and they still drop out. So I don't know where you're pulling your information from.
No, I'm not saying like you don't have any goal at all. I'm saying that they don't have a goal.
Saying that.
No, I'm saying that they do.
Let's go for it. Sorry.
On this, actually, I kind of have an answer to this.
Sorry, Tuna. I want to hear what Tuna said. Like, we're in like this internet cut off each other. So sorry about that. I'll let you go.
It's totally fine. Yeah, it's stepping on each other's shoes on accident. We can take
thanks to Nair Socks for the 2 gift subs to get me back on the panel. My baby is very, very unhappy.
Streamers, bro.
I'm a man of my word. So
I think you should attend to your child.
Hey,
first.
thanks, Corey. When I need your opinion, I'll ask for it. Joe, Admiral, Base Knight, nice to see you guys. Goldie, nice to meet you. All right, carry on.
To wait for my kids for this.
Who feeds Portland's child? That's right, Whick. With all of those dollars that you spend, if you want that child to sleep
Stop. Yes, we're on a hype train. Give me money. That's great. But I want to get back to the conversation because this is an interesting conversation, and before we get too memey, I want to focus in on it because Tuna Chip, you were asked a question, right? The numbers that Lewis cited. 70 to 80% of Black men come in with goals, with aspirations, with things they want. So what happens?
And to be clear, so that you can so that the pushback is very clear. This is based within different Black educator advocacy groups from self-reporting of graduating seniors. And they found that depending on the year, it's anywhere between 75% to anywhere as high as 90% of Black boys who are graduating have some career goal in mind when they enter into a four-year institution.
So my critique is not of the boys themselves. My critique is that their education is not being framed around their goal as much. We have a lot of these programs that are framed around a general purpose that can then attach to a goal. But I think that college, one, should require anybody when they're going to it for them to have a career in mind or a set of careers in mind, and for individually set up the plan of their education around it, and to have someone who the entire time as a counselor. I'm saying that the focus in college shouldn't be about getting more people in. It should be about retaining the people that are actually in and creating more intimate relationships with them. Because what happens through the process
let me talk about that for a minute, if I can. So I went to college, and I did a thesis paper, like a 50-page paper, about kind of the shifting conceptions of the value of higher education in society. And it's kind of interesting, right? We started off with a model, the liberal arts model of higher education, which was you don't go to college for something specific. You go there to become well-rounded, and you learn all the things. You learn the math, the science. You learn literature. You learn history. You do it all, and you come out well-rounded. And there's kind of this idea that you now have this intelligentsia in your country that's going to be the political, managerial elite of your country, right? And we slowly shifted away from that in a lot of ways, and we started saying, like, no, now your degree is your ticket into some kind of position in capitalist society. You're going to want to focus and get a job, like what Tuna's saying. But we didn't really change the educational structure to match that. And that's really what happened, right? So you still go to college and you have this shopping cart experience, right? Where you're setting your own schedule, you're taking lower division courses for 2 years, and then you're expected to choose a major, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into the deep end in the upper division courses of your major. And I think that's maybe a lot of the reason why people might have a plan going in and then drop out when they don't want to wade through all that general education. But here's the thing. I don't think it's a bad idea to say that we want college graduates to be well-rounded. I think the number one factor that's been under-discussed here is the rising cost of education. And I think the number one solution is to make higher education free for the people who are truly capable of getting a degree. They should be able to go and do that for free, and it should be a general thing that has a general value to society, and we should want to fund that as a society.
Admiral Love, I agree with you, like in your contention that we should make college more accessible and more affordable. Hooray! Yes, I agree. But I think what we're observing and what we're talking about, it holds true even in countries where college is free, right? So these problems exist in spite of the cost of college, right?
There is actually a variable here that does remove some of these issues, and it's not a variable that people like to talk about because it's demonized very quickly. But countries in Europe with mandatory military service typically have lower dropout rates for university students.
I love that model.
Because they're not going into university until they're 21. So what happens is they get out of high school, they spend 2 to 3 years doing civil service, they're paid, they learn a trade, they're living on their own, and then once they're
ask you a question based on that. Well, how is having a liberal arts degree bullshit if it requires that much discipline to pull it out and get all the way through?
I never said it was bullshit.
It kind of triggers me a little bit to hear people like you say that.
I never said it was bullshit.
Degrees have no fucking value. It's fucking hard to get through 4 years.
I never said it was bullshit.
That's not what he's saying.
He just said he wouldn't touch the children.
You need to be able to write. You need to be able to read and analyze.
Yeah,
and especially if you're going to get
That's not what he's saying. Hear him out. Hear him out. Hear him out. That's not what he's saying.
Remember, this is the internet. We all have different connections. So even if you're talking to him, he might not hear you.
Are you okay, Tuna?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's just not, he said that the practical skills that make him want to employ somebody and have someone study under him are not present yet. It gives some skills, but not the relevant skills for him to engage with them. If you're referencing his previous point before,
I'm busy. I work, right? And this is something I do outside of work. So if I want the maximum amount of success with the people I work with, I have to pre-select for people who are most likely to succeed. And it's much easier for me to place a new grad with a stats degree than a new grad with a fucking sociology degree.
Well, then here's
Yeah,
the
I mean, this is
question,
just like a
then.
cost-benefit
I'll go for it,
analysis. I
Paul.
sell weed and I do this. I spend more of my time with my
I want my
higher,
time to be
like my
effective.
more profitable customers. Like those are, and
Yeah.
I qualify to select for those. Those are just like
Why-
natural traits to, like inherent to doing, like maximizing your productivity. And that's not a like.
If I
It's
had
not a
infinite time, if I was
negative on
independently
admiral.
wealthy and I didn't work, I'd be taking as many of these new grads as I possibly could. I
Goldie,
would
why-
run myself raw doing this.
Why is whatever you're doing, like, I don't know what it's called, but why is that not just part of college? Like, that sounds like what you're doing
I agree.
should
I
just
agree
be part of
completely.
college. Like,
I agree
I
completely.
real
Well, I
that's what
mean-
I was desperate for the whole time.
Qualification
I mean, I have a
process?
controversial take that might split the room in half. Is that I think liberal arts degrees should entirely be supplemented by the United States government. So anybody looking to pursue a liberal arts degree should go there absolutely for free, because we recognize that liberal arts degrees don't participate in the job market the same way that STEM degrees do. Because
What
art
happened to
art
men?
majors,
Can we
art
center the
majors are
men?
not going. You'll be hard pressed to find an art major that says I'm going for my degree in fine art to make money. They're not going to degrees to make money. So we have to recognize that, hey, there are people who are going to college who are looking to do things that in the world to make the world better in different areas.
I
And
deeply
we gotta
resent that.
consider
I
that as a
deeply
good-
resent
with
that.
the idea that
I deeply resent that as some because I didn't go to liberal art. I went into fine arts, and I when I went in, I was starry-eyed, and I had this shit piled on me that you're saying, and I had like that message told to me, and I believed it, and I was like, oh, I don't need to make money, I just need to be happy. And then like coming out of school, I realized, holy shit, like I wish I had a job. Like what the fuck, like.
And I'm saying, wouldn't it be great if the federal government made different types of things that they already need to do that you could be used and tasked to do within the educational system? Like,
I'm
what if
having
you
a
were working for
problem.
your
Not
fine
like a
arts degree
prescription
that you were
for-
working towards institutions for different art things that they do? The military needs art. The federal government needs art. Politicians need different things for art and design. Musicians need like we
I
literally
mean, that
have.
stuff exists. That stuff
but
exists.
The thing
totally
is that
agree- I
we
totally agree with what
recognize
Joe's
we
saying,
recognize that, like, for example, we recognize that music is of value, so much of value that we have an
Right.
entire portion of the military designed just
Right.
for that.
Those
You
things
can
exist.
Go into the military and be a fine artist.
Those
But
those things
why
exist.
is it okay for the military to do that? But then when I'm saying,
Those
we
things-
should have the federal
Why
government
are we talking
subsidize
about
Those-
that.
arts
those things
degrees
wait,
that
just
are
really
gained,
quick,
like
really quick.
65 to 75% by women
Really-
anyways, if we're
yeah.
trying to talk about like the inequalities in education? Like, it's not a bad point that you're
That's
making
not
in
true,
a
but
general
sure.
level, Joe, but 70% of fine arts degrees go to women.
Yeah.
So making
All right,
all
where
fine
where
arts-
is that
Wait,
stat?
wait,
Where
wait,
is
just
that stat
really
come
quick,
from, and
really
how
quick.
is
I
that
just want to say like
disaggregated?
one sentence. Those things exist, except
No,
the point.
I don't
the
think you
point,
heard my question. I
the
don't think you
point
heard my
that Goldie-
question.
the point-
Googling
You just hold- let me-
Stop.
I'm
hang on a
Googling
second.
it.
I'll
One
let
at
you
a
go.
time.
I'll
No
let
one
you
can
go,
hear no one can hear anyone. Joe,
Well,
finish
my
your
question is,
ask your
Portland,
question,
because
then
you-
you can answer.
No,
My
I
question
was
is
saying
Portland.
something before
Oh,
you
sorry.
asked something, so just shut up.
Oh,
Just-
no,
okay.
go. Yeah.
So all I want to say is those things exist, except the thing that Goldie was saying was that they don't teach you how to apply for those things or actually like aim towards those things. They just teach you these vagaries, and they're not really aiming you at in a given direction.
Yeah, and I'm saying that institutions, as a matter of duty, should make sure they have jobs lined up for you while you're working towards your degree to build your craft in a professional manner.
I don't
Your
know.
degree should
not
also be
necessarily
within
like
a
that.
professional
Like, I
environment.
don't think it services the point of the conversation about education disparities very much.
Right. So,
That's my only
Portland, you
point,
asked a
is I would
question.
like to
I asked a
recenter this
question. I asked a
conversation
question.
around
Portland,
the
I asked
topic.
you a question. Portland, I asked you a
Sure.
question.
Yeah,
I want-
absolutely.
Yeah, you said 77% of fine arts degrees
70,
are
70.
70%. Okay. When you disaggregate that data, what does that tell us?
That women are graduating at a higher rate than men in art degrees, even
Doesn't
more
answer my
so
question.
than,
When
like,
you
on the
disaggregate,
general-
I'll ask it again. When I'll ask it in a more pointed way.
Sure.
Is the data that you cited disaggregated into majors?
It's all fine arts degrees, yes.
Okay. So the answer is no. Thank you.
It's across all. This is a collective of all, like across all fine art degrees.
Yeah, the data is not disaggregated.
Wait,
I got
fine
it.
arts.
Cool.
Fine arts is a degree. There's like other But fine arts is generally the blanket degree they give to a lot of different types of things. That they just call
Correct.
it
But
fine
then when
arts.
you disaggregate that data of what that
Across
means
all
for each
art
individual student,
disciplines,
what does that
is
mean?
Yeah.
across
Yes,
all art
you're right.
disciplines, that is the average that women graduate at versus men. The
Correct.
women,
So
like participate in the college field, like in the education
you.
process versus men. What
Yeah.
is your point in
My-
asking if there's like about any specific feature of that data?
Because we can recognize that data might represent women disproportionately, but also see that there's certain disparities that still exist. For example, in public education, it is predominantly white women. But then when you go to administration levels and different levels of the institutional apparatus, you start seeing that men disproportionately represent those fields. So people will say things like women disproportionately represent education, and that is a misleading statement. Because we recognize that within
we're not talking about the distribution in the like actual profession. We're talking about the distribution in education, because this conversation is about disproportionate representation in education, not in employment. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about by recentering this conversation around the topic instead of going off on all these tangential points that don't actually contribute to the conversation.
Well, are you saying that it will affect
directly then?
Well,
let me speak to that directly. Oh, sorry, Smith.
Well, I wanted to bring it together. Like, so maybe you could be saying that you think that the education level affects employment somehow, or doesn't affect it somehow. You're saying it doesn't have an impact?
It's a super nebulous thought process. Like I can't follow it either.
I'm saying that if we're having a conversation about the disparate rates of college graduation in men and women, then pointing to the fact that like we think a government the fine art degrees should be government.
Let me be clear. We have transcended that topic, and we were talking about
That's why I said I want to recenter us to the topic like 6 times.
Wasn't it Portland or someone else said that they personally forewent education because of the cost, because they decided, well, it costs this much, and also I don't know what I want to do, so I'm going to go a different path. I think if we make these things easier and less expensive and more reasonable, more like what they were about 30 years ago, in terms of affordability, then all of a sudden that changes the calculus, and all of a sudden people have the breathing room to go to college and to do a little bit of like educational self-discovery and kind of build the path as you go, and not have to have like hard expectations.
We already covered this in terms of costs, as like Wick was probably going to say. Like this holds in countries that pretty much don't have tuition, or like pretty much like the fraction of tuition in the U.S. Like I understand this is probably like a U.S. Focused, demographic in the panel, but like there's a reason why this holds like internationally. I don't think he's being spoken about.
Tuna's begging.
Tuna's
begging here, but before Tuna goes, right, just to cuck him a little bit, right? So to Goldie's point earlier with his assertion, right, that it's one of the problems we're having is we have opened up education too much and too many people are going in. So wouldn't it simply making it more affordable just exacerbate that problem, if that is the problem? Now, Tuna, think about that. But Tuna wants to address some things. So Tuna, you have the floor.
A couple of things. First thing, yes, I was the one that said that I ended up leaving education due to the compounding costs. I decided that a different direction with my career. While I was in education, I shifted multiple times my major towards things that were more practical, because I understood when I went into psychology, I was like, when I actually go into this, it doesn't feel like it's actually that realistic, the amount of money that I'm getting. I'm not actually excited enough to incur that level of debt to do this thing for the rest of my life, to take up the cost. I moved slowly towards practicality, but that practicality isn't just due to the fact that it has a higher cost. It also is an act of discovery when deciding what a person actually wants to do. And a lot of people are not going into college with a perfect self-knowledge. They're still going to engage in this self-discovery through those formative years. Smeth's idea about the military thing, or it wasn't just Smeth, but Smeth agreed with it. I remember that. Yeah, it was. I can't remember your name, Red Shirt, Golden Hallfield, or whatever. So
thanks.
What I'm trying to address here is that if you're going to make it free and have everybody come in and open up the gates, then you're going to have a lot of people that are undecided, spending way more time variously just going from idea to idea to idea, not pursuing anything of a directioned sort, and then you're not actually going to get the return on investment that the society is putting into the payment. Now, when we're talking about making education cheaper, I think that that's reasonable, but that's going to come from those businesses. But if we made it fully free and just opened up the floodgates, people are not going to go into places that are going to improve society automatically. People don't
just as a caveat, Tuna, just as a caveat, making it free and opening up the floodgates are two different statements. You could make it free and still make it difficult to get in.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm not saying that
already exists, by the way, in music degrees.
Right.
But you go into college and it's free, and then you fail a course and you're able to just go in the next year. Like Pell Grants exist. These grants exist and they're available to a lot of people. I don't know about people with more money. I don't come
And
from
did you know that? And did you know that if you have a Pell Grant, statistically you're less likely to graduate than those without?
Sure, probably because the
problem.
Pell Grants are being given to people that are already have other things that are going against them. It doesn't make up for the entirety of their. I'm not claiming otherwise.
There's definitely
to piggyback to really quickly to piggyback off of Tuna's point. I think like a major problem that a lot of like young men going into these that are like dropping out. One of the problems is the lack of skills that they've developed. We've like covered that when Goldie was talking about some of the students that he's taught. We've kind of touched on that in regards to people that go into the military that serve like compulsory terms in their countries. They have like more skills. They've got more discipline. They're able to.
They're adults. They're adults. They're adults. When they go to they go to university, they're adults.
But we should. But my problem with this conversation is that we're tackling this at the university level, and I think ultimately like we need to deconstruct this because like there are problems occurring much further down the line that are much more. You
mean like earlier
conducive
or
to
later?
the solution.
Well,
earlier.
I just ask everybody on the panel a question to kind of like to just kind of like give me a better understanding of everybody's positions. Who here thinks that we need an exact 50-50 or like statistically insignificant from 50-50 like breakdown in higher education versus like having a slightly disparate
it's unrealistic. First off, it's not slight, and B, it's unrealistic to want that.
The question
I want women to be more. I want women to be
12 to 22 like 12% men to 22% women or something around there that are going to have college degrees on average. I realize that it's like a large window, but I'm asking, what does anybody here have an ideal window that they'd like to propose? Because I haven't really heard anything about where the window should be versus where it is.
I don't think there is an ideal window. I think the ideal statistic that we should be gunning for is a relatively equal proportion of male to female students who are graduating, who are making it through to the other side.
If they don't need to graduate to enter the fields that they decide they want to participate in, say people get men get 2 years worth of college and then are able to enter their chosen profession without graduating at a little bit higher rate than women. Is there something wrong with that, considering that a disproportionate amount of professional athletes are men and a disproportionate amount of people who
professional athletes, you can't even bring professional athletes into the conversation.
No, you didn't
Goldie, I mean like ultimately we shouldn't be looking at like a certain statistic like this many men like need to graduate relative to women. I just think that we should be prepared to try to give people the skills to pursue whatever they want.
Their programs.
Yeah.
If they're not going to complete their programs, they shouldn't be getting in the first place.
Why not?
Because it's a ripoff.
They need some college to enter the field of choice, and they don't need to graduate to do so. Why do they graduate just to satisfy your desire? Why?
No, because if you complete a degree, you're more likely to have better programs available for you for debt consolidation.
That's not the question. We've already observed.
Part of it.
Joe, you weren't here for the part of the conversation where we observed that men drop out of college at a higher rate than women because they determined that they do not need further education to pursue their
You're
field.
hanging a lot on this pupil,
don't-
dude.
Yeah,
And did
A
you
lot.
under-
you're
did you
making a
understand?
huge
I don't-
load-bearing pole.
Portland, I don't think you're hearing.
Counter argument. You've just said like, oh, I don't like trust this data, which like is really ironic coming from you. Last week, you like hinged your entire argument on data no one else had seen, and so I want to just like time the moderator out for a second.
You're
Oh, no.
but you're doing
Time
it again,
moderator
Portland, where I
out for
say
a second,
something
okay.
and then you just don't understand what I'm saying, and then saying
It's
I
not
don't
that I don't
understand.
understand what you're saying. It's that
What
you're
am I saying
addressing the
then?
wrong points every
What am I
time
saying then?
instead of
What am I
just
saying
addressing like the operative fact of what I'm talking about.
Sure, then walk me through it like I'm a 5-year-old. What am I trying to say, and how is that inconsistent with the discussion earlier as it relates to now?
What do you mean? I'm not talking about like what
You
That
just
was
said
super-
I'm
those
not.
are very
You said I'm
simple
not
questions.
engaging. I'm asking you what I said and how I'm not.
So he's
engaging.
saying that about
So
all of us. He's saying he's
quantify.
trying to recenter the whole conversation, right?
That's my
Okay.
entire point, is
Right,
that we
so
are like completely
resta-
missing the conversation of why there's disparate rates of like higher education
Well-
graduation, and whether that's a problem or not on a societal level.
We need people
to,
when
like,
they enter.
prescribe a different level
Sure.
if we think that this level is bad, and we need to
Sure.
explain why our preferred condition would produce better results.
There's so many questions here. There's a question of why is it disparate. There's a question of so like I think it's kind of, we're looking at a symptom, and like it's not necessarily related to outcome. Like it's it's a little bit abstracted from, we don't even all agree on what the actual outcome
We don't agree
model
on the
looks
injustice
like.
claim.
Well, no, I'm saying like some
agree on the
people
injustice
are
claim.
saying that education in and itself is the value. Some people are saying the job is the value, and so we're not even arguing about the same thing. So I think something I wanted to bring up, and I don't think anybody has said so far, is right, and somebody in my chat mentioned it earlier. The right now the enrollment rate and the number of people actually getting degrees, graduating too, is like way higher than ever before in history. And I think that because of the social pressures on men and the sheer number of men and women going into college, I think that men dropping out are this disproportion of men like dropping out, maybe just like Portland said earlier. Maybe it's because they see a better way to get like income or something by dropping out and getting a trade. If that's it, like it's because like women don't have that pressure on them quite as much, so they're privileged to be able to just stay in and get the degree, while men so that could totally be what it is.
Okay, but
So-
that's a bad. Even if that's the case, right? Even if that's the case, we should still be trying to service those people and like give them the skills that they need to succeed. Just because like they may be like a new like population within like this data set doesn't mean that we should just be like fine with them like failing, right? And like
Wait,
falling off.
no, hold on,
We should try to raise the foundation of like.
No, that's
what
the point, is
like,
that we're trying to
necessary.
I'm trying to explain that there might be an explanation for this gap in education rates that doesn't leave the men who are slightly disproportionate to the women, or like statistically
slightly.
disproportionate to the women. They don't necessarily have to be imperiled by the lack of college education. In fact, the statistics still suggest that men without college educations have like larger, like by and large on average, higher earnings than women who have a 2-year degree. So we know that there's a statistical difference in the earning potential of men with some college education versus women with some college education. Men have an easier time entering the job market.
That is shifting. There's
It's
shifting.
absolutely
There's-
shifting.
Like
There-
and the thing, and
and we're not
something else
talking
too.
about like whether or not any given rate is ideal. We're just kind of observing the
Yeah.
shift in the trends. What
And-
I haven't
okay.
heard is like any reason why the shift in the trend is bad.
Right.
I think I've outlined some pretty good reasons previously.
No, you pointed to some tangential arguments.
No, those
about
are not.
men-
If you don't think these are related, then I just
pointed
don't think you
to
understand
tangential
the
arguments
context.
about men's depression and like earning conditions on a greater scale that I think like has some merit, but isn't like very serviceable as a direct part of this conversation because it takes the education rates into a very abstract territory where you can't possibly prescribe any kind, like make any kind of analysis about whether it's good, bad, or neutral.
Well, a problem
Well,
is
I
the
did
problem.
all of society's
Sure, go for it, go for it.
problems.
Like an issue I have like really deeply, and this is why I'm really in support of like data disaggregation when we talk about these things, is that certain groups in America are going, I'm going to speak to America so the Canadians don't get upset, is that certain racial disparities skew data. For example, Black students have the high, particular Black men have the highest dropout rates. It's anywhere from 30 to 40%. Additionally, the percentage of Black people generally graduating in 5 years or less is anywhere from 45% to 50%. For white students, that's in the 60s. So it's 60 to 67 or so, depending on the year. For Asian students, that's in the 70s, and it floats in the high 60s to low mid 70s. That's a big deal. Because when you put all these things together and make a statistical stat, you might be able to say, okay, well, like, for example, we just looked at men as an aggregate. It's like, okay, well, men are dropping out. And then something I'm concerned about is that Black men in particular and Black boys are skewing data so severely that people think that people don't understand that these injustice claims with these racial groups are different. So like, even if we look at like, because the one thing that I want to recognize is that, for example, in education, men aren't recognized in education. In education, in America, it is dominated by white women. There's never a point in a white woman's educational career from 3 to 4 years old to 18 where women are not within their educational apparatus, within their support systems, and within the institution. They're baked within the institution. And that's a great thing. We already know the short term, we already know the effects. We already know the benefits of having people who look like you in positions of power and authority. The data is there. But then like when we say, like, okay, when we look at Black teachers, it's anywhere, depending on your state, from 5% to 9%. If we disaggregate that data, male teachers is anywhere from 2% or less. That's a problem. So you have Black students going into education who don't have Black teachers with them, who don't have Black educators with them. And we know the benefits of this. All the benefits exist. You have more access to gifted and higher and honors classes, higher senses of belonging, less likely to be expelled or even within the disciplinary system. Higher attendance, higher test scores, higher grades. And we know this to be true. For Black boys, if you have 2 or more Black teachers, your dropout rate, your likelihood of dropping out drops by 30%. That is a significant number. And then your likelihood to go to college jumps anywhere, depending on your area, from 40 to 50%. That's just for 2 teachers across over a decade. That's a huge thing. But the problem with that it's not just, oh, we just need more Black teachers. It's like, what are you doing within these apparatuses to retain the people that you want? For example, you want to know the field that disproportionately is male represented in higher and public education? Physical education teachers. Men make up 55 to 60%, but Black men make still up 5%. That's a problem. So even within the gendered gap that was created by white men, there's still a racial gap that, and even if you want to say like, okay, if we want to make this equal, we just got to replace men with women. That's not what we had to do. We have to recognize that at its face that these systems are unequal and there's an injustice problem.
So you want affirmative action.
No, that's not.
He never said that.
I never said that.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Like we can also talk about like the preschool to prison pipeline. We can talk about how like young men are like disproportionately like disciplined, and how like, you know, cultural norms again like inform like
Black men,
young
but yeah,
boys.
I get your point.
Yeah, and young boys in general also like also just get in trouble more often. You know, they get into more trouble. So like these are all like it's
well, the problem with I push back with the idea of trouble, because we got to recognize when we disaggregate the data, the things that black boys are getting in trouble with it is disproportionate. You could have a black student and a white student commit the same offense, and the black boy is 6 to 9 times more likely to be seen with something with their disciplinary record. That's a huge problem.
That's true.
We don't have to feed the fucking essentialist argument. I want to hear you, Joe. What's our solution?
I said multiple. I think I laid out multiple solutions there.
What?
But if you want, like,
wait, hold on. Why is it gonna be
so many words? Can you say it in 300
Well,
words?
you laid out
my argument as essentialist.
Give me a proposition.
Why'd you lay out my argument as essentialist? So let's start there before I answer.
No, not you. No, I'm saying that you're feeding this other person's essentialist argument by having to talk about this question of whether or not they're
the other person.
No. What I'm saying is we can ignore what I think is not a genuine conversation and not your points. I think your points are good. I want to hear what your solution is.
And this is why I take offense to the essentialist thing. I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let go on this because this is what people do a lot. I'm not going to let you go on this. I'm going to hold you to this.
That I'm being essentialist.
Like,
Joe,
the things that concerns me is when black people talk about the injustices that exist within the education system, there's always this desire for someone to say, well, we're not going to go into the essentialist route. We're not going to go into the race baiting route. And like, it doesn't, these things exist. So I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm not trying to put you the coals saying that like, this is the thing that like you're knocking on. That's not the reason why I'm saying
but hold on.
That, like,
hold on. If your solution isn't affirmative action, then that changes the whole conversation to talking.
I'll give you a few things.
It changes. Wait. Just tell me why I'm wrong, real quick. I'm saying that I think that if you're saying the solution isn't affirmative action, you're changing the whole conversation to empowering black communities.
It's going to be empowering students, and you're going to have to reach students where they're at. For example, you have to, if I'm just looking at the system as it currently is constructed, a priority should be not only retaining and not only hiring more black teachers, in particular black men. It's also about making sure that black men have opportunities within the educational institutions when it comes to retention, support systems.
That sounds like affirmative action.
That's not affirmative action because you're not like once you have black teachers and proposed
affirmative tenure.
No. You're not.
There's multiple ways of going about it. Like you're just focused on.
Let me give you an example. Step 1: make sure your black teachers that already exist in your institution are being seen, heard, and retained, and that when they have certain issues and certain injustice claims, that they are recognized within the institution. That's one. So retaining your black teachers.
That sounds like affirmative action to me.
Teachers. How is that affirmative action when they're already in the education system? If there's a case where like 2 teachers are equally likely to be laid off, but one of them is black. How? I'm not going to let you run from this. How? I'm saying
and you
the
choose,
black teacher
and you choose to keep one just because they're black.
The black teacher already exists within the educational system.
Yeah, but you're saying retain.
We retain them by making sure they have a support system within the educational system.
What does that mean?
I can take place in various forms, but I'll let Joe is probably more informed on this than I.
Yeah, you like. Let me give you a simple example, right? Actually having a relationship with your administration and your administration actively having a relationship with you. Your supervisors actively having a relationship with you. We see time
like more
and
than
time
the
again,
others, more than the other teachers.
We have to recognize that the disparity exists.
That's affirmative action if you're treating them unequally. I think at least it feels like it to me.
Black teachers are less likely to have a positive engagement and positive interactions with their supervisors.
That's a problem.
Depending on your state, it's anywhere from 40 to 60% of their interactions are disciplinary. Things that have nothing to do with the educational environment. So I'm saying that one level for retention is making sure the conversations that you have, and this is for the administration aspect, is making sure that administrators have conversations with the teacher.
Yeah. So when you have a data point and you want to counteract the data point by forcing people to behave in a different way, I think that's affirmative action.
Administrators have to change their behavior.
So it is affirmative action. It is affirmative action. It is.
It's not affirmative action.
Hey, Joe, we don't have to argue whether it's affirmative action.
Yeah,
That's not what.
We're kind of stunlocked.
I can hit different points.
Stunlocked.
Yeah.
Let's move
if you
on.
believe to be affirmative action, we can move on for that. So retention is the one thing.
There is an issue here, though, is that this breakdown is not just being skewed because of black men. This this issue with men being like disenfranchised from education is true in places, even ones that don't have black people.
It's gonna change in like different ways depending on what you're looking at.
So if we're having a current crisis that is very broad, right? It's not just like maybe in America.
It's also international, to be clear. Like this problem, like is international.
Exactly.
Right?
Also Scandinavian is what I heard earlier. I didn't hear like
Denmark,
it's a greater global problem. I heard that it's like here and from Iceland to Finland, which like sounds fairly Scandinavian and like white specific to me. So if there's a greater cultural problem that includes like the United States and Scandinavian countries.
So to be clear, in America, this disproportionately affects black men. He is correct in that, because America has the additional baggage of its
this is
issues,
my concern, like, and the reason why
it is a more like general.
And the reason why I'm being direct here is that you'll have people who say, well, let's just adopt a different model. Let's just adopt a different educational model, which is a great argument to have. But we have to recognize that those models might be approaching conversations, discussions, discourse, debate, and solutions of redress on race that are different and divorced with what's happening in the United States. So it's totally okay to say we should adopt X or Y model from X or Y country. However, the question should be, how do these different countries approach diversity, equity, inclusion in their educational environments? How they approach diversity, equity, inclusion in their educational environment in higher education? Because you might just bring in like some whatever model, the Nordic or whatever other place that people, Sweden, whatever you think is cool, but you might also just lead to the same thing, that treating black people like shit.
I think what
it boils down to.
Stop. Just to be clear, we're not talking about adopting those models. We're talking about how those models also have the same issues that we're observing.
Right. Like for instance, right? Like we can say like the one thing that like I think people need to interrogate, right? Like if we're gonna pull away from race, because I know that makes people uncomfortable. Like if we pull away the racial aspect,
this makes me angry.
Women are, sorry, Cope. Women are disproportionately represented in public schools. And the question that I ask is that justice for women?
Don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters. I'm happy with it.
You don't think it matters? Wait, hold on, stop. You don't think it matters though? Like
no.
If why not? Like,
because we've already outlined a bunch of different reasons why, like economically and societally, men don't face the same pressure to graduate from college and obtain a 4-year degree to sustain their long-term earning potential and their livelihoods. Like we've already outlined a lot of reasons why that's the case. And you haven't presented any reasons why, like we should have something closer to a 50-50 split just as a fact of life.
I like it because I'm an accelerationist.
So just to be clear what I said,
problem.
Yeah, I said that in public education, women are disproportionately represented. This is due to a myriad of policies, including but not excluding the Civil Rights Act and other different sort of social and societal changes. The question I'm asking is, with these social and societal changes, with these legislative changes, with these policies, is that justice for women?
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to use morally loaded terms like justice. I don't have any problem with it, though. I don't see a problem with it. I think that there is no reason that no one has presented me a good reason to be worried about it. I would think about it the same way that I would.
Men are getting hurt.
That's because you don't understand how important belonging is. Like Joe mentioned it.
I understand perfectly how important belonging is.
So can I?
So then, don't you think? Hold on. Okay. So belong
completely like dysfunctional as a conversation.
If you think belonging is important, 89 to 90% of public educators in elementary school are women. Then it's 72% in middle schools, and then it drops to 60%. It is never greater. It's less than 60%. In education, women are overrepresented, and you're saying that
representation of genders in educational positions is different from the conversation about educational.
Do you don't think it's important? Wait, do you think it's important that men have male teachers in public schools?
No.
Okay, so
Not
can I
necessarily,
outline a
no.
potential
Answer the
scenario?
question,
then?
Portland. I mean,
Inherently
Smith
makes
said no.
a
We'll fight.
male
We'll
or
fight there, friend.
female teacher superior in a class that's largely going to come down
Should
to
men
like,
have male role models? Do you think it's important for men to have male role
yeah, but
models?
I don't
Yeah.
think those
Then one
role
of the
models
places
need to
that they
be
get
public
role
school
models, one of the
teachers
places that people find their role models is in the school system, because we're all required to go there. We spend a good majority of our childhood there in the school system.
What percentage of sports coaches for men are women? They have an enormous number of role models to pull from
Men overrepresent men overrepresent coaches regardless of gender.
Yeah,
And
that's my point, is that you have a disproportionate amount of male role models in the public school infrastructure and space in men in these academic, extracurricular activities.
Most of them are not educators, by the way.
Here's my question for you,
that's
Joe.
not
Here's my
relevant.
question
They're
for you.
role
And that is
models.
relevant because the
No, for
only
the
time you're
purposes-
seeing these
No,
male
no, for the
teachers
purposes
is
of
in
this
an apparatus
conversation, it's
separate from the
entirely
educational
fucking
system.
irrelevant.
It absolutely is relevant.
Irrelevant. You're talking about how many male and female role models people have in a public school system in terms of leadership positions, and whether or not that's like a largely equivalent amount, and whether or not it not being an equivalent amount is detrimental to what the educational attainment level of men at a college level. Like, no, I don't think that this is a very direct contributing factor, and I think that
it absolutely is. You just don't see...
Portland, respectfully, why do you keep doing this? Like, I'm kind of curious, like, you keep knocking on this door of equality and 50-50 and distribution. Why is that,
No,
is
he's
that
not.
important to you?
No,
Like,
I'm asking you to
it's what it
outline
sounds
an
like to me.
ideal condition. When I do that, it's through the lens of asking you to prescribe an ideal condition if you think that the current condition is a bad one. And I think that that's a pretty remedial request for a panel of people who are supposed to be discussing the topic.
Sure. So Smith and I were asked the question because he got sort of caught on affirmative action. I said one solution when it comes to black boys is making sure that those black boys have black male teachers, and you have to make sure that the black male teachers that you have already in your institutions have the resources they need to be successful, but also the black male teachers who are in the educational field working towards degrees also have the resources to be successful.
Okay, wait. Let me respond.
If we understand black male dropouts are disproportionately higher than any other racialized group that goes into education, then what are we doing to make sure that those black male teachers are also supported before they even enter into the classroom? And then the third level of this is that what are the public schools and the school districts all across the country making sure that black male teachers know that these jobs in these schools exist?
That's
so
my
how
point.
are they
Okay, so wait, let me respond, Portland.
Away from
Let me respond.
Conversation about a very, very narrow subcategory.
Let me respond.
Subcategory? What are you talking?
Do black men do black men want to be teachers?
Yes.
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 Then why are they teachers?
Why aren't they teachers?
Yeah.
Because a lot of them don't have the real, I think.
Do black men want to be teachers as much as white men?
I don't understand why you asked that.
I would say I would bet you $50 that white men want to be teachers more than black men want to be teachers.
Why do you think that is?
How do you
right now?
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the thing. No. We agree on that. We agree on that. We agree on those things. I think.
I'm just
on why that is. That's because of the realities we live in. That's because of the way that we grow up. That's because of the environments that black people live in. And so they don't have role models and stuff like that. So we agree on that. So I think that the place that we shifted. So I believe. Okay, well that's what I think. That's what I think. And so I think the way that we change this isn't by making it so that there are more black teachers. We need to actually go to these communities and bolster the actual communities. It's actually a completely different conversation. If we're talking about colleges, colleges should be made, and these institutions should be made to serve all the people at large, without any bias whatsoever. And we should make it so all people have an equal footing and are pushed into these institutions from an equal position.
Right, but
otherwise it's affirmative action.
We can't just do you know how long we've had a racialized history in the United States? How long?
the whole time.
Okay, and you're saying that now, because of these factors, and that
I believe affirmative action doesn't work. That's what I believe.
I agree. I agree too. So we can move. I agree for different reasons that you do, so we can move past that. But the question I'm saying is that why are we looking towards an equality model, which is what you were describing, versus an equity model? Do you
No.
believe that there was an injustice
I wasn't describing
along the lines of race? Let me ask you
I
that
do
directly.
not equity. Your equity model is affirmative action. An equality model is not affirmative action. An equality model gives every so if it's the case that that women don't want to be fucking teachers or something, or men don't want to be teachers, and there's more women, then why should we force men to be teachers? Like that's the equity bullshit where we're trying to make it so
There's
we
no
need to make sure
force
that
it. There's no
we need to
force it.
make sure that these male teachers never get fired so that they'll end up 50-50.
No,
yeah,
if
that's
there's
what
a male teacher, if there's a black male teacher who is
Don't
not
fire
doing
him.
their job equivalently, fire them. Yes, but we have to recognize
But
that
less
some
than
black
white
male
people.
teachers.
Well, then you're talking about disincentivizing hiring practices for black women, then, right? Or like anybody that isn't a black man. So like, how do you like balance that out without end up?
How do
like,
you achieve an equality model when these inequalities exist? That's my question, Smith.
what like it's like you make equality you make it so that the inequalities don't exist. You target the inequalities and you make it so that they are fixed.
Is the
And-
inequality an injustice?
Yes.
How?
And I'm not saying, and when I say equality is an injustice, I'm distinguishing that from what you're saying as equity. I don't think the inequity is an injustice. I think the inequality is the injustice. And
Okay,
so,
we're stun locked.
Oh my god.
I know that a few people
We
have
have been.
really trying to get in. I know Tuna really trying to get in. I want to give him a space. And then I know that Corey Campbell's been really wanting to combat some of Portland's statements. So I want to let those two things happen, and then we can get back to being stun locked if we so wish. But go ahead, Tuna.
Sure. So the first thing I wanted to point out is that, Joe, under the presumption that we should be doing more to encourage boys of all races, period, to be enfranchised into education, your point makes sense. What Portland was asking you, and what I'm asking also implicitly by bringing this up again, is why does it matter? Why should we encourage them? Now, I'm going to butt up against Corey's point before, and because I know that one of Corey's main points is that when people get through the entire college process, they are getting through it and having better results statistically. They're going to do better off in a lot of subjective but pretty trackable and popular things. Success in marriage and money and health and such. The only thing I'm saying is, why should we, when the boys themselves are disenfranchised, encourage them to be reenfranchised when they're disenfranchised because they think that there are other things they want to do with their life other than going to college? Why does their opinion matter less than, say, this data?
In America, non-white people were overtly ignored in the institutions, whether it be legislatively, socially, or practically. This is true. This is why, in the face of, hey, we need to make sure that black students get the education they need and they ought to go to colleges and universities, states were able to have land grant universities, also known as historically black colleges and institutions. So instead of integrating into the education system and allowing black people to integrate into the education system, states decided to instead make separate institutions that they poorly funded and still excluded them on the lines of race. So even in an environment, like I'm starting very far back to lead to a point. Black
Sure.
students were excluded legislatively, and it took the Supreme Court to integrate schools twice. In that integration, a disproportionate amount of black teachers were fired in predominantly black schools and replaced with white teachers, and in particular, white women. When Jim Crow ended, there were two people that entered into the educational system: missionaries, which were predominantly white, and capitalist institutions, which were predominantly white. Black students, and in particular, non-white students as well, were excluded from these institutions as a matter of legislation and law. My entire point is saying that if we recognize that that this inequity, this injustice existed, that it is a duty for these institutions to rectify that. And to rectify that by recognizing and acknowledging the injustice claim, understanding within the acknowledgement that what happened was wrong, why it's wrong, and how people benefited from it, and being particular about who benefited from that. And then within that acknowledgement, you're going to have a level of redress.
So
Because
payback.
we're not talking about
Reparations.
It's not payback. It's not pay. It is reparations. Pretty base of you, but
Joe.
it's not. It's not a matter. It's not a matter of. We have to recognize that within the redress, we are going to have to do things as a matter of justice, not do things as a matter of equality.
I'm
but
against
do things as a matter
justice.
of justice for those groups, because these groups
Joe,
were
I
excluded
don't-
from the systems, man.
understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. There's an inequality, but that's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking.
There's an inequity. There was an injustice done to non-white people as a matter of policy in America.
I don't disagree with you, but here's the
Great.
thing. I don't think that education and enfranchisement into higher education is good for anybody in the way that we're talking about it. I think that people being able to make their own choices and go into the labor market in whatever way they want to is good.
I'm
That-
saying that.
And
Okay,
this is
sure.
important. Let me just
Sure.
make the point. If they want to go into college, great. Give them the funding. But we need to have markers that these people are genuinely interested. We don't just
But
shove
when
them
they
into.
do go into college, this is my whole point here. This is why I'm really confused as to why you in Portland seem to be just jumping past this point. When they do go into college with every intention of completing it, men, specifically men, drop out at vastly higher rates than women. They fail to complete it at
They
vastly
also-
higher rates.
That's because-
and you can say that a
Yeah.
portion of
also
that. You get to
explain
stop.
that. They also
Okay, you will be stopped. I will
explain
stop
that
you. Okay, so even if you say that a portion of that, a percentage of that is choosing to do so, right? Even if you say a portion of that or a percentage of that is choosing to do so, that leaves the other portion that is saying that, hey, I really wanted to complete it, but I couldn't. What do we do about them? What do we do with that? Well, why don't we care? And if you want to leave because you won't let me talk, that's on you, buddy. Anyway, go ahead. I want Corey.
Oh,
Well, so I can actually bounce off of that, Wick.
let me go after you, Corey.
Yeah, to engage with Tuna a little bit, because like you shared, which I'm grateful that you shared your experience in terms of like as you were progressing through your psychology degree, it seems like as you were kind of like getting the lay of the land, you recognize that the return on investment isn't going to be there, and thus you pivoted. It seems like you pivoted multiple times. So to me that begs the question of like, so why is that disproportionate? So I'll even grant that that's true, okay? In terms of like that, you can extrapolate that to all men, just like as they get the lay of the land, if the return of investment is just like not there. So like, so why is that happening only to men and not to women? And we see the earning potential of women increase. Are you saying that like men are just no longer interested in earning power?
No, it's that I think that men are incentivized, and not only incentivized, but men are just more interested for whatever reason it is, even if it's not incentive. They're more interested into going to fields that pay for a life. Currently, I know it's not necessarily wise going forward because of automation, but going into careers that don't require college education. These people are making a choice, right? They're just like with the choice that I made to go into manual labor and start pursuing my more practical pursuits, was one that I made because I simply thought that it was something that was afforded to me. A lot of women don't have that. A lot of women are not looking at these jobs because they're not inside of their imaginarium. They're not like put there in them as kids. And also some might just be aware of it, but not want to do it. There's a fundamental difference in what men want to do and women want to do.
So really quickly, Corey. So I think what Joe was talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, wasn't about talking about like reparations. I think that ultimately that redress that he was referring to is going to be like a renewed investment in like the education system, an investment in the children, not pushing them off into college, but giving them the skills to succeed once if they decide to actually apply and if they decide to go down that path. And I think that's ultimately where we should refocus the conversation, how best to do that, because ultimately like that is where the problem lies. It lies at like the more foundational like view of it.
I 100% agree. I think it is absolutely the skills to succeed, and we should be bolstering these like these kids in impoverished like neighborhoods and shit, giving them skills, giving them like places to go to learn shit, and like giving them like communities and fucking organizations and shit like that. And I don't think that we should just be like being like that would lead to the positive outcome, and that would lead to people being empowered to make the change. What I don't think we should do is tackle it from the top and just be like, well, we just need to make sure we never fire black teachers or fire them less, or
I never said to never. Like,
you said fire them less. You said when you're gonna make sure they stay in the faculty.
I just have a quick question. I have a quick question for Tuna. Because, like, when he was saying that, and even when I was speaking, Tuna, like, you were shaking your head. So, like, do you have, like, I just want to understand your disagreement, like, why we shouldn't be tackling this issue.
Niggas think I talk long. I'll save your time. Niggas think I talk long. But it's all good.
Not just that. Not just that.
It is primarily that.
Well, I want to hear from Tuna.
Sure.
So I don't think that we need to address this, because I don't actually think that going to school and going through college and getting these careers that require college education is better. I think that the only thing that measures whether or not something is a good career choice is whether or not the person is passionate about doing it and decides to do it. I think that that's what gives that decision merit. Now, if you want to change the college structure, you can change it in the way that I was talking about, which is instead of giving people money to go to college due to the fact that they are able to go, I instead would want to have a payout system that has to do with their grades. The first year you get funding, and then at the end of that year, based on your grading, you get a certain amount of money back based on how well your performance was for your second year, third year, fourth year. And I think that college should be reframed around picking a career, a goal, something that the college education is working towards, and choosing every single class towards creating an individualized education towards it. I think general education in college is fucking despicable.
I wouldn't even hate that. I wouldn't even hate that, and I don't even think we're disagreeing about that. But like, I guess my problem with like your take is that like we can't have what you just suggested and also like try to focus on, because everybody else on the panel, and please correct me if I'm wrong, speak up, but everybody else on the panel seems to agree that there's a problem with people that are going into college, they're suffering, they're dropping out, or they just don't even want to make the journey because they don't have the skill requirements. They don't have like the life skills, they don't have like the discipline, etc. So everybody else on the panel seems to agree on these broad facts as far as I'm aware. So why can't we do that? And your solution could also like fit like in that mix.
I'll point out that I don't agree with that. So if when you meant everybody else on the panel, you meant
you're wrong.
Me.
I think.
Okay, sure, whatever. My solution to a person not having the snuff is that they drop off, that they get out and they go into something that they do have the snuff for. They have something they have the passion for. And if they don't have a passion for anything, they have nothing. That's my opinion. People need to care.
I feel like that's such a privileged point of view. Like,
I mean, it is, but...
yeah, I bet that you probably had the skills. So I'm assuming that like you're building this like sort of like mental construction off of like your own world view, like your own experience, because I'm sure that maybe you felt that way, right?
No, I was
a lot of people.
I dropped out.
Okay, and like people drop out all the time. Like we can. I'm kind of like. There's one thing I'm annoyed. I want to hear what Corey has to say, but like there is an illusion of choice in these things, and just because you have choices doesn't mean that you're actually free. You can say that there are these options available. You have these choices, and these are the choices that you have within life. All I'm saying within the bounds of education is that we improve these things so that people have more choice. So that people aren't just predestined to enter into a position just because on the basis of their degree. They have the choice to enter into the field how they see fit and how they want to participate in that. So just because you have choices within a field, like say fine arts, like just because you have a choice to do X or Y doesn't mean that's actual freedom to do what you want. And for a lot of these institutions, how they're constructed, our choices are manufactured. And just because you have 4 or 5, that might not be substantive to what you want to do. And then by the time you find out that the thing that I thought I was doing isn't actually substantive to what I want to do, and then you switch, that's going to put you back years, if not decades. And for some people, it might affect them because on the basis of their other intersections, it might affect them for 3 to 4 years. But for Black people, it might put them back a decade or longer, which again is statistically proven.
You said you just said.
Wait. I just want to engage with Tuna for a bit. jumping, because like I think Joe made a great point in terms of the illusion of choice, where I'm gonna try to like zero in and attempt to like distill it down. It seems like you just analyze it to in terms of like, well, this is just different choices, as in like as you went through university, getting the lay of land, well, you made a different choice. I think this is related, but you might disagree. So, would you apply the same analysis in terms of like, comparing the suicide rate between men and women, completed suicide, in terms of like, well, okay, generally speaking, completed suicide rate of men 3 to 4 times higher than women. Do you think that's just like, well, they're just interested in a different choice?
Yeah, I mean, I have no strong claim of thinking that we need to prevent or reduce that rate. That's not something I think is a big deal.
I understand.
To me, life has value because
Wow.
if a person doesn't want to live, then
Exactly. So I think that distills my point of like it pretty much like it's just a different choice, and where the chips land, that given your framework, that I don't agree with it, but that makes sense to me.
Do you realize how when people say, "Hey, we don't care about men anymore," and you say, "Yeah, I just don't care that they're killing themselves at 3 to 4 times the rate." Yeah, fuck them,
No,
right? Like,
I care about men.
what?
This is the
What?
point.
Wick, it's just different choices. Like they're just
Wow.
interested in killing themselves more at a higher rate.
No, this is
and like how are how are the factors and like the things that exist in your world lead to that as a choice? Because you can push, as we've seen, you can push men in a way so that they make the choice for you, which is what's happening with male suicide. So how are we alleviating the conditions that lead to men thinking that this is the only option? That's the thing I'm trying to fight.
No, I understand. I know that their choices are being eliminated, that their imagination and their capacity to have hope in their future affects both of these things. That's the continuity between the two of these. People are ending their lives because they don't think life is worth living, and people are ending their college education because they don't believe that college education is worth going through. I think that choice is what
they can't make it through when they want to.
Sure.
You always discount that.
So turns out self-determination is a good thing to have.
Suicide is murder.
Oh my God.
Well,
We're not
yeah.
I'm just gonna, if we're gonna talk about it, I'm just gonna say that sentence and I'm gonna be done with it.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
Sure.
Gang, we are winding down. This has been a discussion. I will end on saying that I think that we are doing men a disservice by just discounting their struggles like this, and people talking about it
I
as
agree.
if it's just some choice. Yes, it is a choice, but our choices are influenced by our conditions and the people around us, and we recognize that this is having knock-off effects outside of education. Education is a form of freedom, and we give up that freedom at our peril. I will say this. Thank you for being here. I want to give everyone here a chance to have a final say, shout themselves out, tell people where they can find them. What we got coming up? Gang, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. You thought this was a shit show. Tomorrow's the dog fucker pan, right? We're going to have Chud Logic on. We're going to have Straighter 8 on. We're going to have Lactoid on and a few others. We're going to talk about, well, exactly what I just said. Fucking dogs. And the other animal creatures, I suppose, bestiality in general, the morality of that. Yeah, should be an interesting one, I guess. This is what you guys wanted. Okay, you asked me for it, so tune in.
I
6
didn't.
p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Well, you didn't, but they did. But for now, I want to give everyone a chance to have the final say. Corey, please tell people where you can find you.
Yeah, as usual. Thank you very much for inviting me on. For I guess another really chill chat as usual. Still super grateful and appreciative to be here. And like, yeah, I think this is a crisis. I think this will have I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I think this will have devastating long-term effects down the road. Not like societally, pretty much globally. It looks like, just because, like I said, this is like an international problem. And that, I have my speculations as to why it's occurring. I think this is largely a socialization problem, in addition to an institutional problem as well. But yeah, I guess I'll talk about it again another time, hopefully.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, we're gonna have more discussions on this because it remains a problem and people remain educated on
Yeah.
it. And we need
And you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv, Corey Campbell 84, Twitter, Instagram, literally it's Corey Campbell. Thank you so much, Base Knight, Tuna Chip, Smith, and always a pleasure, Joe, and love you, Wick. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the bits, Feder Methodist. Next up, we have Joe Lewis, please.
Yeah, thanks I guess for the late jump in. I saw you had some people like I guess having difficulty filling the space, so I appreciate you allowing me to speak on the topic. I appreciate that, Mike. Yeah, men have an injustice claim. If I were to say my point kind of broadly, is that black men have an injustice claim too, and black boys have an injustice claim. And for me, because I recognize what's at stake for black men and boys, that's where I'm at. That doesn't mean I'm ignoring the injustice claims of other groups of people, in particular, other racialized men, but I recognize that my tools and resources should be dedicated to recognizing that injustice claim and fighting for that injustice claim, because these other groups aren't going to fight for these black boys. Be sure to, I guess, you don't follow me. None of you guys like me, so you don't really watch my content anyway. You just use me for clips. Just be sure to follow all these other individuals. They're great people and do content in a bunch of different ways. So be sure to diversify your political diet when able.
Okay, I do appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I've been sick for the last week, so my planning hasn't been up to snuff, or I would have reached out a little sooner, but is what it is. So thank you for being willing to jump on short notice. Really appreciate you. Next up, Smeth, please.
I believe that it's unfair that men are dropping out at a higher rate, but I think that it's a good thing that women are being educated more, because it's creating the conditions for us to address the underlying problems, which are the social relationship between men and women. And Tuna Chip said that we don't have the social plasticity to be able to address these things, but I'm really looking forward to being a house husband. I'm so waiting for that, and so I want to empower women to do that. And I think that we're in the perfect place to do that, and that now's the time to speak about it. So that being like that, with all these problems, this is a perfect moment. Now is the time, and so that's how I feel. If you want to, I'm Real Smith on YouTube, posting my YouTube here. I'm also going to post my link tree.
Hey, ladies, just letting you know, if you want to support some guy, if you want them to sleep on your couch while you work all day to make sure that their needs are met.
No.
Do I have the man for you?
He's got a dog
Sleep
costume
on your couch. No. I'm talking about take care of the kids, do the dishes,
full service.
And do my streaming. Do my
Okay.
streaming, paint my nails, take a shower.
Yeah, this is gang. You know what? His links are in the chat. Go click them.
I'll get a
connect. Great guy. Thank
That's
you
not
for
the
being here.
be all end all, but yeah. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but yeah. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for being here, Smith. Really
welcome.
appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate your perspective. Thank you again. Next up, we have Tuna Chip.
Hey, thank you, Wick, for having me. I'm here on twitch.tv/tunachip. No frills, no extra bull ass. All I'm looking for is having discussions about individuals. My final word on the panel is that I think that we've overestimated the value of education and the jobs and their contribution towards society, the ones that require college education, and that it is good that people are going into the labor field. It is good that people are going into fields that are allowing them to give a sense of purpose that doesn't require all of this education and all of this ambiguity that messes people up. Regardless, I'm going to advertise tomorrow. Smith, correct? Tomorrow, me and you are going to be having a discussion.
I thought it was Saturday.
Say it again?
I thought it was Saturday.
Yes, it's Saturday. Is it Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying the wrong day. Regardless, Saturday, me and Smith are actually going to have a conversation about something he brought up, which is the relationship between men and women, spanning from polyamory and monogamy to even broader concepts of gender roles in those relationships. So if you want, I'm just going to give a little plug there. Give me a follow on here, and we're going to be talking about it on Twitch on Saturday at, I believe,
8 p.m.
8 p.m.
Yes,
8
EST.
Saturday.
Okay, cool. Tuna, we really appreciate you. Thanks for stepping up. Thanks for being willing to come on and give your takes. Really, really like what you have to say. Check him out, gang. I gave the link in chat. Give him a follow. Next up, we have someone who else just jumped in. The Based Knight.
Hello, Wickers. I am the base tonight. Wick just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come on and chat about this important topic. You don't get enough credit for providing a platform for small streamers and pseudo-intellectuals to disagree and cast aspersions, so God bless you. If I had to sum up my position, school sucks, society sucks, kids deserve the world. We should focus on improving folks' material conditions. There's a lot to fix. Solutions-based politics is the way to go. You can find me on twitch.tv/thebasednight. I've got a TikTok and YouTube coming soon.
Okay, check him out, gang. Twitch.tv/thebasednight. Give him a follow, right? And yeah, you're more than welcome. I am always looking for new voices, smaller streamers, bigger streamers. If you're interesting, I'll have you on, right? And even if you're not, if sometimes I need to fill a spot. But thanks again for going. We're gonna rate out right now. Let's go to Stardust, right? Just make sure to tell her about the dog fucker panel, right? And get your copy pastas ready. So yeah, let's go.
See you guys.
Yep, I'll see you
Always a
tomorrow,
pleasure.
6 p.m.
Always a pleasure.
Yep.
Yep,
Get
take
those copy pastas. I want to see them spammed. Don't slouch, okay? Right? Make sure she knows what tree she's barking up, okay? Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.